Alright, in this video we're going to start discussing the assault action. Now the assault action is when a unit will move into an enemy unit's hex, and that's when you get into your close, stuck-in, close quarters combat. Remember that your assault factor is the number listed at the bottom right of the counter, so like with this infantry, their assault factor is a 2-4. Now to save myself a little time on repeating things, make sure you keep in mind the potential for op fire that can happen when it comes to movement or offloading transports or anything like that we've already previously discussed. I'm not going to go over all those specific rules again as we're discussing the assault action. Just make sure you keep that in mind as we're discussing the assault. So to conduct a assault action, the unit can't be marked as ops complete or disrupted, and it can move up to its movement value into the enemy's hex as long as it has the movement points to pay for the end resulting hex as well. So just as a quick example, if this infantry were wanting to assault into this hex, they couldn't have spent all 3 of their movement points and then assault into the hex. They do need to have the movement points required to enter the enemy held hex. You can have a stack of units move together to conduct an assault. So like if these infantry and this M113 were stacked together to conduct the assault, you can do so, but if a unit is ineligible to conduct an assault for whatever reason, it will get left behind. So this M113 could not assault the T80, but the infantry could continue on and they'll conduct the assault while the ineligible units will remain behind. Now, the reason I'm saying this M113 is ineligible, even though it does have an assault factor, is the fact that it does not have an AP value. So if you do not have an AP value, you cannot conduct an assault into a heavily armored unit like the T80. Now, when it comes to defending units, units can be marked as ops complete. They can still counterattack. But if they're disrupted, they do get to counterattack, but their to hit number would be changed to a 6 instead. So just as another example, if the T80 were being assaulted, but it were disrupted, instead of its assault value being a 2-4, it would be considered to be a 2-6. Now, when it comes to the assault itself, there are many modifiers that can affect it. Make sure you do eyeball these modifiers. And a lot of them have to do with infantry because infantry do get an advantage when it comes to an assault. You're going to have your usual potential modifiers, things like HQ, but again, let's look at our example here of these infantry wanting to assault the T80. Infantry that are conducting assault versus a vehicle do get a -1 to their to hit number as long as the enemy vehicle is alone, doesn't have infantry stacked with it. So this infantry attacking and assaulting into this T80, they would reduce their to hit number by 1 since the T80 does not have any friendly infantry with it. Also, there's another bonus that infantry can get, and that's if they're assaulting into a city or town hex, they're going to get +1 to their attack dice, to their firepower. So if this infantry were to assault into this hex, their 2-4 assault value would effectively become a 3-3 from the bonuses they're getting for assaulting into a vehicle that does not have infantry support and into a city hex. So when it comes to the assault itself, it's going to be resolved simultaneously. So let's say our infantry are assaulting into this T80. They will adjust for any potential modifiers. They'll both roll, the attacker will roll, the defender will roll. And the difference is when it comes to assault is there is no defensive roll for terrain, for armor, for concealment. None of that applies. You are purely calculating the number of hits and they are automatically applied to each side. So however many hits the infantry inflict, the T80 is going to take, and however many hits the T80 inflicts, the infantry is going to take. Like usual, when it comes to inflicting the hits, if you do have stacked units, you're going to try to apply those hits as evenly as possible with a D6 randomizing roll if you do have odd hits left over. So what you need to pay attention to after the assault and all the hits have been applied is whether or not the defender remains. If the defender has been eliminated, obviously the assaulting unit's going to be left there marked ops complete. It was victorious in its assault. But if the attacker remains, the defender remains, Then you're looking at the number of hits each side incurred to determine which side is going to have to retreat. If the defender remains and the attacker did not inflict more hits than it received, then the attacker must retreat back to the hex from which it started the original assault. Let's say, however, that instead the T-80 here survives, but it receives more hits than the infantry does, then they are forced to retreat back, and they have to retreat back in the opposite 3 hexes from which the assault occurred. So this T-80 would have to come back in this direction, and it would have to retreat into an eligible hex. So it couldn't violate stacking limits or retreat into an enemy held hex or adjacent to an enemy held hex. Also, while you're calculating the results, make sure you do keep in mind any potential losses that can be incurred to HQ or leaders, because that will apply as well if they are part of the assault. Once you're finished with any potential retreats that have happened, both sides will be marked ops complete to conclude the assault action.